Hello everyone, it's Mariners Fanatic back on the YouTube video, and in today's video, hopefully I fixed my mic, but we are talking about trade targets. In this video, I'm going to be going over 10 players that I'd like to see us acquire, and then 5 players that I want us to stay away from. The 10 players I want us to target: 2 frontline starting pitchers, 2 hitters, 2 potential 5 starters, and then 4 bullpen arms. So let's jump right into it with the frontline starting pitchers. The 2 guys that I want us to target, and one of these you should be able to guess on your own, is Luis Castillo. I've been wanting to acquire Castillo for probably the past 2 years or so. I think Castillo is very good. He is a free agent in 2024, so this would be similar to a trade that was done last year where the Blue Jays acquired Jose Berrios from the Twins. He had a year and a half left, and then they were able to extend him. Now, so far, that hasn't necessarily worked out, as Berrios has been struggling, but this is a type of move we could see with Castillo, and I think that Jerry should take a shot at acquiring him. Castillo is at worst a number 2 or 3 starter, and at best he can be an ace of the staff. Robbie Ray is still probably our guy, as he's been pitching great the past month and a half, but Castillo will be a very solid number 2, and Logan Gilbert, who is already a number 2, number 3 type pitcher, just makes our rotation that much stronger. The same can be said for my second frontline starting pitcher target in Pablo Lopez. He is a free agent in 2025, so it would be a little bit more expensive to acquire him. Also, it's unsure of what the Marlins' plans are. They're still kind of in that mediocre middle where they're kind of out of the playoff race, but they're close enough if they were to get hot. So it's hard to tell what the Marlins are going to do at the trade deadline. But I definitely think that Pablo Lopez is a guy we should target if we're going for a top of the rotation arm. Next, talking about those 2 5 starters, potential bullpen arms I was talking about, with George Kirby being kind of on an innings limit per se, he may not be going the full rest of the season, and we definitely might not want him pitching in the playoffs. Obviously, we'll see when it comes to that what they decide to do, but 2 5 starters I'd like us to look at acquiring is Jose Quintana of the Pittsburgh Pirates and Matt Moore of the Texas Rangers. Both of them are veterans of the league. They've been around a while. Both are left-handers and have the ability to pitch long relief out of the bullpen. And they are both free agents in 2023, so this would be a short-term, half-season move. It would not acquire nearly the prospect capital that a trade for Castillo or Pablo Lopez would. These are value targets, but they are also going to be highly sought after because of their price tag not being as high. But those are definitely 2 solid veterans to look at in the upcoming days for trade targets. Moving on to the bullpen. Now I've got 2 lefties and 2 righties. You could say, oh, the bullpen's doing great, and it is doing great. However, we still only have Borucki as the only lefty in the pen. I've preached about it on and on and on past year and a half that we should have done more than just have Miz. And like I said, Borucki's been great so far, but I'd like to see another guy. The 2 lefties that I look at acquiring is Andrew Chafin with the Detroit Tigers. He has an opt-out player option after this season, but if he chooses to opt in, he wouldn't be a free agent until 2024. So I think it's likely he opts out of his deal with Detroit after this year, but maybe if he was traded to a contender, he chooses not to opt out. But Chafin is a guy that I wanted last year at the deadline and in the offseason. We didn't get him, but it's fine because now we have another opportunity. Detroit is not in the mix for the playoffs, so let's go take a look at him and see if we can acquire him. The other lefty I'd like to look at acquiring is Joe Mantiply with Arizona. The only issue with Mantiply is he's not a free agent until 2027. A lot of club control there, which means it's going to cost more than just a low-level prospect. There's probably other lefties out there that would be good options, but these were just the 2 guys on non-contending teams that I thought fit with what we're looking to acquire. The 2 righties I'd like to look at are Michael Fulmer, again of the Detroit Tigers, and then Scott Barlow of Kansas City. We've already made a trade with Kansas City for Carlos Santana. Why not try again with Barlow? He's not a free agent until 2025, so like Mantiply, It'll cost more than just a low-level prospect to acquire him, but he's a solid bullpen arm who has had a lot of success, and he'd be good to acquire. Michael Fulmer, he has a bit of a track record as a starter and as a reliever. This year he's been having a good year, and he is a free agent in 2023, so this would be a short-term rental option. Obviously, there are other bullpen arms out there that could be possibilities, and we'll see where Jerry goes. Finally, the two hitters I would like to look at acquiring are Juan Soto and Ian Happ. When I was looking through teams and rosters, there really weren't a whole lot of guys that interested me. We already acquired Santana to play first base and DH mix up with France, and I'm not really interested in targeting anyone else in that area. Outfield is pretty full in terms of players, not necessarily in terms of outfield talent. Winker is okay, not great in the outfield. Lewis, just coming back off of injuries, is slow out there, and he's still trying to get his feet under him. And then Haniger coming back soon, same thing, declining out there in terms of defense. And even though we have the top defense in all of MLB, you can always be better. And having Haggerty, Frazier, and Dylan Moore out in the outfield, though it's not bad and they're good defensively, the offense is not as strong. Obviously, Juan Soto is a right fielder. If you're not going to extend Mitch Haniger, then what's the point of not targeting a right fielder? Obviously, it would take a lot of prospect capital to acquire Soto, but I'm confident that Jerry could craft a deal to get it done. Whether it happens or not is the real question. I'm guessing it's not going to happen, but I would love it if it did. The two advantages we have is we're in the AL, so the Nationals are not playing us very often, and even if they did in the playoffs, it would have to be in the World Series, of course. There is much less risk for the Nationals if they trade to an AL team. Moving on to Ian Happ. Happ is, generally speaking, a center fielder, but he can play all outfield positions and some middle infield, mostly second base, which has been a hole for most of the year, although Adam Frazier has been getting hot lately. So we'll see if he continues that hot stretch. But Ian Happ is basically a super utility player who's much, much better than Dylan Moore offensively. Forgot to mention, Juan Soto is a free agent in 2025, and Ian Happ is a free agent in 2024. Both have a couple years of club control, so it's not a rental one and done, and they're both good defensively and offensively. So those are my 10 trade targets. My bet is we get one of the 10, if any, but ultimately it's going along the premise of Jerry's either going to target a frontline starting pitcher and bullpen or a frontline hitter and bullpen, one or the other. So we'll see what direction he goes, but either way, you can always use bullpen arms, especially at the deadline. So we'll see what happens. Now, also in this video, there are 5 players that I would like us to stay away from. Those 5 players are Willson Contreras, Madison Bumgarner, Brandon Drury, Nelson Cruz, and Frankie Montas. My reasoning for each: Contreras is a catcher, and yes, it would be nice to have another good catcher as Luis Torrens has not been playing well. However, Cal Raleigh's kind of claimed the starting role, and he's been a top 10 catcher in baseball this year since his resurgence. Both offensively and defensively, he's been playing very, very well, and he's earned it. So I'd like to see him continue to be the starter, and I don't necessarily want Contreras to come in just for a half-year rental. I don't think it's worth it. I'm not a prospect hugger, but in this situation, I don't necessarily see the value in it when I still want Cal Raleigh starting behind the plate. And we're pretty full up in the DH area. Which brings me to Nelson Cruz. I love Cruz, obviously fan favorite here in Seattle, but it's going to cost us a lower top 30 prospect for a guy who's only going to be DHing. Cruz will go to another NL team, pretty much no doubt, maybe an AL East team, but I don't see the value in us acquiring Nelson Cruz. Next up, Brandon Drury. Now, Brandon Drury's been in the league since, I believe, like 2015, and this is the first good year he's had. Last year he was okay, but this is his first well above average year, and I just don't buy the hype. Now, if he continues and has a good rest of his career, you know what, I'm happy for him, and I'm happy to be wrong. But ultimately, I don't see us trading for another right-handed bat being a good idea. Yes, second base has been an issue, but as I mentioned earlier, Frazier has been improving, and of course, Haggerty, Toro, and Demo. Between the three of them, fill in the other positions nicely as bench pieces. If you want Drury as a short-term fix, sure. Same thing as Contreras. But ultimately, like Contreras and Cruz, I'm not keen on the half-year rental. And Jerry has proven that he seeks to get players with club control, like Abraham Toro. Even though it hasn't worked out as well with Toro so far, now we have flexibility. And Toro still has some value to other teams because he is young and has years of control. Contreras, Drury, and Cruz are all guys that don't have control and they're a little bit older. Moving on to Frankie Montas. Now, Montas is a great pitcher, but he plays for the Oakland A's. And that means they're, of course, in our division, making the ability to acquire Montas more expensive in terms of prospect capital. Again, I am not a prospect hugger, but I also don't believe in giving up unnecessary amounts of prospects. Trading for Juan Soto is one thing, trading for a half year of Frankie Montas is another. That's my take on Montas, and I think we should stay away from that. Finally, the last player here is Madison Bumgarner. I've never liked Madison Bumgarner in the first place. I don't want him on this team. I don't think he's a very good pitcher anymore. His contract is terrible. Need I go on? I've seen a lot of people talking about, oh, we should get Bumgarner. Would it be cheap in terms of prospect capital? Maybe so. Maybe the Diamondbacks eat some of his contract. Either way you put it, I would rather have Kirby out there and figure it out later on than trade for Bumgarner and spend the money or prospects for a guy who is in his decline. That's just my opinion on that. If you disagree with me, that's fine, but I don't see the value in trading for Madison Bumgarner. He is over the hill by a long shot. So there you have it, guys. Those are my 10 trade targets and then 5 players we should stay away from. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Mariners Fanatic, out.